Alright, here we are. Got my little DR200 mount. Hopefully this time I'll actually get some good footage. I've done this about 4 or 5 times, so but anyway, this is just the one I built in the thread on Thumper Talk. I've basically reduced a lot of weight, upgraded suspension, tuned up the motor a little bit, and basically set up for off-road. It does have still dual sport tires, but I don't have the plate holder on it, and I took off the headlamp. But I have everything to put it back on the street if I want to. But I really only ride it off-road anymore, so and actually, like, this gauge cluster is I crashed a while back and cracked it, so ended up just zip tying the key on it. But other than that, I mean, it wasn't such a bad thing. It was more weight reduction. The only thing is, recently I did just put a brand new regular gel cell battery in it. Previously I had run a lithium to try and drop weight, but I've gone through 2 lithium batteries. They both bloated, and it was within about 3 to 4 rides they'd already started to stop working, so I just gave up on them. As much as I like shaving at about 3 or 4 pounds, it was not worth the hassle of always having to kickstart it. And that's the other thing, is the bike actually has a kickstart, where the stock bikes don't. I use parts from an 80s model DR200, not the SE, just the regular old Zero bike. And I am running a little bit lower than the stock gearing. But I used to ride it on the street, so it kind of has a weird sprocket combo. Stock is a 45 and 15. I think I'm running a 13 39, maybe a 12 39. I have to look at it again. But either way, it must be a 12 39 if I'm running lower than stock gearing. And it does okay. Honestly, I probably could go a little bit lower, so maybe I'll go back to a 45 on the rear, or I might try doing a 428 chain swap, because I did find some sprockets that would fit, and that would just kind of take a little bit of weight off the drivetrain, make it a little snappier. Because this thing is still a very big, slow forker. I did upgrade the engine a little bit. I have a Kindtech jetting kit in it that they don't make anymore. I guess I bought one of the last ones a couple years ago, and a FMF Q4 exhaust, so it's nice and quiet for trail riding, but it actually sounds really good when you get on it. People really never expect it to be a little DR200 to come rubbing through the woods like that. And the awesome thing about this bike is they actually have a pretty good cam in it, so it actually rips way up top. But with it being just a little trail bike, it comes with like a really heavy flywheel, so it also still just tractors everywhere, like this right here. Just kind of plugs along. So pretty much with that, you have the option of 2 gears for just 2 to 3 gears for literally any situation. I've climbed some really ridiculous hills in 3rd gear without any problem. It's just like this clicks right along. Yep. And then original top end and everything too, and it's got about 6,000 miles. The bike overall. Oh, and I did upgrade the air filter and all too, to go with the exhaust. So that's part of why it's actually got pretty good pull now. The other big thing, which I'm sure if you're watching this and if you own a stock DR, you know I've already got this done to it. Just seeing what I've done so far is that I've upgraded suspension a lot. Obviously, like the stock forks could not even handle that right there, because I'm not a heavy guy, so it actually sprung pretty close to my weight for the rear, but the front is always just super mushy and soft, and doesn't really have good feel even when it is that soft, because at the bottom it just kind of gets harsh, which once again it's just kind of a known issue with these types of forks on these bikes. Just typical damping rod forks. So that being said, I have upgraded the springs with springs from well, I guess they're BBR Motorsport springs for a CRF 150F, and they flop right in. They're a little bit stiffer. They're not the progressive type springs that are in stock forks, so that's part of why they actually grip pretty well. They do pretty well and hold you up pretty well, and don't make it harsh. And then the other thing is the damping rods. To fix that issue, I have gone to the race tech emulators. I wasn't the first one to do this. Actually, I don't think I was the first one to do the fork springs either. But anyway, the damping rod, or the fork, what is it? The emulators make a huge difference on the damping. Like, the forks actually stay up in the stroke through the small chop, and then whenever you get to the big stuff, it actually starts using your travel, which is amazing. So, sure, you can do this type of slow pace riding I'm doing right now, but then if you start picking up a little bit, the front just stays planted like that right there. Like, that would have just started, the front end just would have like been wallowing all over the place, and I would have hated my life. Where right now it just stays planted. I think turnoff's down here somewhere. I'm also trying to remember these trails while I'm talking, so sorry if I'm not completely focused. Alright. Missed it already. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Alright. Now, anyway, so forks, incredible. And I've had those for a couple years now, maybe 2 or 3 years. The biggest issue with the DR200 is finding a rear shock that actually works, because Works Performance used to make one for it, but they either went out of business for a while or just decided to stop making the DR stuff, whatever. So I did some measurements and ended up finding that you can fit a shock from a KTM 65 on the rear end. And in stock form, it can work, and it's not terrible. It's honestly a little bit better than the stock shock when you crank up the damping, maxed out for rebound and compression. But it still has a weird feeling on the hard hits, because because the KTM original setup is a PDS, so it has like that progressive damping. So in the harder hits, it really just kind of stiffens up a lot, similar to what the forks were doing before. So I ended up trying to rebuild the shock and revalve it myself, and ended up screwing that up. I couldn't get it to stop leaking, so kind of sat in the closet for a few years. I just put the stock shock back on it and ran it like that, and it was okay. But ended up sending it, finally just reaching out to Stillwell Performance, and they I'd actually converted to a bladder system, so in the future I could do shock changes myself, like rebuilds and whatnot. Because my intention was that I would play with the valving myself, but just time got in the way. I wanted a bike that I could ride anywhere and do everything with. Whenever I wasn't on my race bike, which is a Husqvarna 125, which is a whole nother animal, but it needed the rear shock to be that bike. So I sent it out to them, told them what I had. They were like, yeah, we can do it, we can figure it out, and sent it to them. In a couple weeks I had it back, and honestly I haven't touched it since I put it on. It's been that good. It really feels like it was meant for this bike. I gave them all my specs and type of riding I do and whatnot, and now the rear and the front just mesh so well, and I love it. It wasn't that badly priced. I mean, it was just a typical cost of the valving, and I think I got the shock for around 120 bucks. So if you don't count all the extra I spent on the bladder, and I actually bought a Race Tech valving kit, where you wouldn't need to buy that if you were sending it to them. So in about 300 bucks you have a really good shock that's actually valved for your bike and your weight. So where even the old Works Performance one wasn't even like that. So got your pluses and minuses, but even that was more expensive, and I'm sure it worked great. It does lift the rear a little bit, but for the type of riding I do, it's actually not that bad. It lifted it maybe a quarter of an inch to half an inch on the rear. So it's not insanely drastic, and I just ran the forks a little bit taller. Take a second gear, just load right on up. Anyway, now the other thing I did it around the same time as the rear shock is there's a guy that had done the 24 hours of Glen Helen on a DR200, and he did a lot of stuff very similar to me. The only thing that I haven't done that most people seem to be doing people aren't riding this very much right now, and we've had a few storms. Hurricane Ida passed not that long ago. So I guess people haven't come out here to clean up. But anyway, one of the things that other people have done is they replaced the carburetor. Supposedly it really adds a lot of snap, which does not surprise me, because this thing is the most rubber bandy power. So it's not really a bike you can really charge at something and then expect it to last second to pop, kind of unweight your front end. You kind of just have to use momentum with this bike, or slow down a lot to be able to do that technical popping the front end up and stuff. double blipping and stuff like that. But I mean, it has the big wheels. And I've mentioned big wheels because I'm used to riding a bike with 19 16-inch wheels, a little electric bike. And I guess that's the other thing that bothers me on this, is that the throttle does seem very laggy, but then again, I'm used to that in that 125 that both have very crisp, responsive throttle input. But then again, this isn't a race bike, so it gets the job done. And just like this right here, I can just go out and enjoy the trails. I don't feel like the bike's beat me up. The suspension does well, so the bike doesn't really show its weight as much whenever you're at this type of pace. Now bring up the pace and then you start to realize that it's a 250 pound, 15 horsepower bike whenever you're trying to swing it through the corners and accelerate out. But it's hard to beat, and it's so reliable. The only issues I've ever had were really like kind of chain issues from things coming loose. I ended up putting Loctite on the things that came loose. I think my counter shaft sprocket was the biggest one. And that's really about it. I've ever had issues with this other than the starting system, because the batteries and the things age and wires just vibrating and snapping. And it won't run without a battery, so it kind of can. I've had issues where I had to redo the battery terminals. But again, not big issues and kind of stuff you'd expect for a bike that is 97, almost 30, I guess 25 years old. So actually in a couple of years I'll be able to get an antique tag for this. Never have to worry about getting a tag again, which will be nice. Except that I lost 2 tags on this bike in the trails and had to have it replaced. They always look at me like I'm crazy, but MC trail. This is my favorite trail on the little electric bike. Probably on any trail bike anyway. Got a lot of loops, a lot of fun turns. Just like that right there, man. Like, it was just normally that would really have upset the suspension, but it just kind of just kept going. It just absorbed it and kept going. So, like I was saying, the other thing that the guy did that I had learned about from the 24-hour bike is he moved the foot pegs back rearward so that they were more in line with the swing arm pivot bolt. And I had never thought about it, but every big bike does that. Every motocross bike, it's only the really old trail bikes that didn't have that, and it makes it to where your weight is directly transferred into the suspension whenever you have that in a line. And on these, with your weight being so far forward, it loads up your front suspension even worse. So it actually adds to the whole issue of your front end being so, like, I guess stink bug, or I don't know, like a warthog sniffing the ground. Like, your front end just kind of feels like all the weight's on it. And then you also have the fact that the suspension is so soft. So by adding that mod to push the pegs back, it keeps the bike nice and balanced. And that's part of why it does so good, like when I'm going through the whoops. Normally whenever you go through whoops, it would just kind of, the front just kept feeling like it was like smashing into the next one. And your rear was trying to just like kind of skid around. Where now, with the new shock and the pegs move, the bike just stays nice and even, nice and balanced. So that was probably the most improvement I've had on his bikes in a while. Okay, someone obviously got lost here, and they've just kind of made it a new trail. That's interesting. Anyway. So those are the big things. Let's see, I can't really think of much else at the moment, but I have done one race on this, and I posted a video on that a while back, and I had an issue, and it ended up, I think it was I found that this metal tank, whenever I got the bike, was actually really rusted out on the inside. So the first thing I ever had to do on this bike was just clean out the tank and de-rust it. But every time I pull the car apart, there's still like a film of rust in there. And I know one guy on the forum commented saying that he has found a universal tank that fits, that's plastic. And honestly, I would like to do that because I don't need this giant metal tank because the range on this thing even doing this trail riding, I think it's like 60 miles to the gallon. I know, like, whenever I was riding on the street with the tall gearing, I was right there on the edge of breaking 100 miles per gallon out of this thing. And I think Suzuki claims 105 miles per gallon because they come, yeah, it's so lean, and they're made for just like, you can get into fifth gear at like 35 miles an hour and just put along. So if you were to, I think if you were to ride along at those speeds, I think you absolutely would break 100. But I was always cruising at like 70 plus because I used to use it to get on here so I could get to school. Need this giant, nearly, I think it's either right at or above 3 gallons. I used to get almost what was it? I used to get close to 300 miles on a tank, if I remember right. Definitely around 250, which is crazy for any bike from the factory, it seems nowadays. And so I wouldn't mind going down to like a 1.5 or I guess 2 gallon tank would be fine, and 1.5 would be perfect for what I do. I really never do more than about 30 or 40 miles of trails, so I don't really need a big tank for what I do. Alright, this is where it gets really technical. Let's see, which line do I want to take? Right here to the right. This thing just shines. You just literally put in the first gear, 1/4 throttle, and it just works its way up. Now the other thing I have done, like I mentioned, is I have done a lot of weight reduction on it. My goal was to get it to where it weighed 250 pounds even, with 1 gallon of gas in it. I've yet to actually weigh it, but I did document all the weights I had dropped off, and according to the manufacturer specs versus the amount of weight I dropped off, I should already be at that goal. Because I've dropped about 20 pounds of weight off of it overall, between the exhaust, the battery, which once again the battery is not really a thing anymore. I took off the rear rack, I changed out the fenders. What else? The whole headlamp assembly. Even when I do actually have a lighter light, that I can put in, which is a LED, so I get some good lighting whenever I'm on the street. But I removed the entire like metal bracket that holds the light in. So, and that was, you know, it's only a couple pounds. So the bike just, even though it's heavy, you feel it whenever you really push it. The weight's in the right spot. It's nice and low. It's not all up high like it was with the rack and the headlight assembly. You drop weight right off the top, which really makes it feel much more nimble. But anyway, yeah. So with that, and then that's a good bit of weight dropped off, and just fun to ride. So I think that's about all I really have to say about this, which I know I've been rambling and kind of been out of just whatever comes to my mind. But so I guess I'll just focus on the ride and let y'all enjoy, see what these little 200s are capable of. Moments when you realize this is not a motocross bike and it weighs a lot. Oh, there's one other thing I did upgrade is I did upgrade the front brake a little bit. It's still the same caliper and master, but I did replace it with a stainless braided line and good, really nice fluid. I think it was the red line fluid, if I remember right. But anyway, it really helped with the feel and the overall power, because the rear brake still sucks. It's still a drum brake. But anyway, I think that's officially it. So are like supposed to stay right here in the middle? I mean, I don't understand. That's right. That's right. infamous headlight hill. I see why. I tried it once on Saron, but it was really slick and wet. Ay, ay, ay.